The premium compact SUV segment has a new player in town, and this one isn't wearing a German badge. It's the new Land Rover Discovery Sport. It fits the same template as a BMW X3 or Audi Q5, but it has one added trick up its sleeve. Make that two added tricks, because the Discovery Sport features an optional 7-seat layout, lending it a clear practical advantage over the current 5-seat offerings from BMW and Audi. For an extra $2,000, you can get access to an extra 2 seats in the back. Now, as you can see, leg space isn't terrific, and it's probably not a space that 2 adults would want to sit in for extended periods, but this is a real bonus for this segment. The added seating arrangement is just one facet of the new model that aims to shift the goalposts in one of the most competitive segments going. Now, despite those fairly short proportions, Land Rover's actually managed to get quite a few features inside the cabin. There's quite a bit of space in the back seat, as you can see, rear air vents as well for all 3 passengers. At the front of the cabin, this car definitely has a split personality. And I say that because you look at the dashboard, it feels very Range Rover-esque. All the buttons and switchgear, even this pretty neat gear selector that rises elegantly out of the dashboard. It's thoughtful as well. You've got plenty of USB spots and plenty of storage. Look further down though at the floor mats and the cheap plastics that surround the lower part of the cabin. This is definitely a vehicle built for work as well as play. The Discovery Sport starts life at $53,300 plus on-road costs, undercutting its competitors by some margin. The Discovery Sport is available in Australia with 3 different engines, a 2-litre turbocharged petrol and a pair of 2.2 turbocharged diesels with varying tunes of power. The model we're driving is the flagship SD4 diesel, producing 140 kilowatts of power and 420 newton meters of torque. Now, that split personality is also highlighted by the way the Discovery Sport drives out on the road. That's because it's tasked with juggling a multitude of different things on the road. It has to be compliant and quiet in the way most Range Rovers are, but it also has to be sporty and practical. And I'm happy to report that it ticks all those boxes quite well. Through the corners, it's a very capable dynamic machine. The steering reacts nicely to driver inputs. There's excellent body control. While there is a little bit of roll through corners, it's definitely a car that you can communicate with well through the bends. And you know what? Despite this car's curb weight, the engine works pretty well in daily conveyance. It's smooth in getting up to speed, and the transmission does a good job of keeping it at its optimum rev range. There are a couple of instances though where the engine can feel a little bit languid, particularly when it's strained. So for instance, I'm sitting at 80 kilometers an hour at the moment. If I put my foot down, it'll stall for 1 or 2 seconds, almost like it needs to have a think about what it's doing before then moving on. That lag is also evident from down low in the rev range, where it takes a couple of seconds for this thing to really spool up and get going. But other than that, it's a nice linear power band, particularly in the mid-range. And then once you get above sort of 3000 RPM, it can become a little bit breathless. But in daily scenarios, the diesel is definitely a powertrain worth looking at. Sitting 212 millimeters from the ground, the Discovery Sport is fitted with standard off-road equipment such as a 4-mode terrain select function that tailors settings for the engine, gearbox, centre differential, chassis control system and power steering. Now, the other remarkable element about the off-road driving today is that the Discovery Sport manages to do all this stuff while cosseting its passengers. We're not getting bounced from side to side despite going over these really sharp, rocky edges. And the car really manages to mask just how tricky the terrain is underneath. We found a similar sort of experience when we were driving on faster dirt roads, and that's partly down to the calibration of the stability control system. It bites when needed, but it's always pretty progressive, so the car isn't going to do anything unexpected. That off-road prowess and extra seating capacity are both factors that should bode well for the new model in Australia. That, as well as its starting price, which is aggressive enough to put the established German manufacturers on notice. The Discovery Sport arrives in showrooms from May.